card and the message. So first, y'all go ahead and check this out.
Good morning, students. Happy Sunday, happy Thanksgiving, and hook 'em horns. Am I right? All right, it is no longer November, it is now December, and you know what that means. It's the most wonderful time of the year, right? Seriously, like the holiday season is remarkable for a couple of reasons, right? It's the time of year when there are hundreds and thousands of adults stop working. They just stop working. There are hundreds and thousands of adults and students even who spend time with people they don't like because it's family and because it's the holidays. We put up with the weird, creepy uncles or the aunts who drink too much wine and get too political. We put up with family drama because it's Christmas. We decorate our houses. Like, I like to imagine the first husband who was like getting picked on by his wife because he's not helping her decorate the house. And so he's like, you know what my contribution's gonna be? I'm gonna go in the backyard, I'm gonna cut down a tree and stick a tree in my living room. It's my contribution. Seriously, I don't know why trees are a thing. I don't know who made the decision. I don't know when, but I like to think that that's how that went. Some people will spend hours meticulously, perfectly wrapping every Christmas gift, right? That's me. Wrapping presents is my love language, one of them anyway. So it truly is a remarkable time of the year, and we do all of these things all in the spirit of celebrating this kid who was born some time ago, some kid in some town in the middle of nowhere, and it feels insignificant. And yet, we sing songs, we tell stories, we do all of these things. We bring family together. We make these little shrines. Nativity scenes, not true. We make these little nativity scenes. We give gifts to each other. And when you think about it, the entire timeline of human history is based on this kid's birth. But how and why? How did we get here? What does this mean for me today? So it can mean a couple of different things. For some people, the whole Christmas story is just a fairy tale, right? Some kid born of a virgin birth and he rose from the dead and all these, it's just a whole fairy tale. It's more fiction than fact. For some families, it's more of a cultural thing. So it's a reason to take a break, to slow down, breathe, take some time off, spend time with family, again, make good food. It's just more about the cultural significance. For some family, it's part of their identity. They have traditions and rituals, and their family's DNA is tightly wound up with Christmas. And then for some, I venture to guess there are at least some of you guys in this room where Christmas is really just a time of year for people to be fake, to put on a good face, do things we don't like, pretend everything's okay, pretend like we're fine, pretend like stuff's not really messed up underneath the surface. So it wouldn't be an Arron Thurmon PTSM teaching moment if I didn't have a little story. So we're gonna go back to 2002, Christmas of 2002. I would have been 14, 13, and it was the best Christmas of my life. No, I'm actually just kidding. It was the worst Christmas of my life, and let me tell you why. 2002 was the first year after my parents got divorced. They got divorced in November of 2001. 2002 was the first year after my parents got divorced. The entire year had been me sitting in the middle of my parents fighting and arguing, going to court, testifying, telling the judge that my mom's new boyfriend hit me and my brothers, having Child Protective Services come and pull me out of class and interrogate me in the office. They'd show up at my house asking me, do you have food? Like, does Dad mean to you? Is he home? Does he take care of you? Just living in the middle of chaos, bouncing house to house, at my dad's house, to my mom's house, to my dad's house, to my mom's house. We had just moved to a new home about 30 miles away. So new house, new town, new school, new church, new friends, new everything, basically. And actually, truth be told, I was hacked off at my dad. Because when we moved, he was like, look, it's just 30 minutes away. You'll still be able to go to your old school. You'll still be able to hang out with all of your old friends. And none of that happened. I didn't have any friends. And truth be told, we had 0 decorations that Christmas. 0. My one gift that year was a duffel bag. And I think my dad sensed my apprehension. He was like, well, if you don't like that, here's a $100 bill. It's like he was trying to make it better, but in reality, he's just kind of made it worse. We had uniforms that year in school. So we had to go buy whole new outfits. And I had just hit my growth spurt, so none of my old clothes fit. And so I had 2 sets of clothes. 2 shirts, 2 pants. That was it, that I wore the entire year. 2. Can you imagine going to school with 2 sets of clothes? I felt poor in every sense of that word. Not just financially poor, but I had no friends. I was relationally poor. It's in a new place, new church, new rhythms, new everything. Spiritually poor, emotionally poor. It was definitely not the most wonderful time of the year for me. So I would venture to guess, again, there are at least a handful of you in this room who this Christmas feels a little broken for you too. It could be that it feels forced or fake, or that, man, if you just knew what was happening behind my curtains, you would think so much differently of me. And for some of you, it may be a broken relationship with a parent or a sibling, or maybe it was a bad breakup. For some of you, maybe it's a seat at the table where somebody should be sitting, but is no longer with us. Maybe Christmas this year is filled with anxiety about who might show up. Weird, creepy uncle or obnoxious aunt or whoever it is. Or maybe your family has been shattered with divorce or some other family trauma that has ripped you apart inside. See, it's just slowly over time, the joy of Christmas just starts to fade, and it gets replaced with just dread and anxiety about schoolwork and family and stuff that I don't want to do. And so this is an interesting time for you students, because this is when you start to change, when you start to evolve even. You enter those teenage years and you start thinking, really thinking for yourself. You lose that just wild-eyed wonder, everything is true if you tell it to me, element of being a kid, and you start thinking for yourself. Your brain chemistry changes. The number of neurons in your brain double. You start processing information so fast, and you lose that childish innocence, and you lose that little cute littleness, and you start becoming an adult. Things don't really get more complicated. You just start perceiving things as more complicated. You start seeing that things are complex. You start understanding little nuance, and things just feel really, really messy. And you start thinking things like, why am I singing a Christmas carol about peace on earth when there's no peace on earth? There's no peace on earth. There's definitely no peace in the Middle East. There's no peace in my country. There's no peace in my culture. There's no peace in my family. There's definitely no peace in me, in my life. Why would I sing a Christmas carol about peace on earth when there's no peace? Why would I do that? But when you think about it, this really is the best time to take a fresh look at the Christmas story, the Christmas story, if you will, and try to bring back just a little bit of that wonder that we've been missing. Not as a reality escape, but as a reality check. What do you really know? So, zoom out a little bit, look at Israel in the time of Jesus' birth. They had spent hundreds of years being ruled. They were conquered and ruled by the Assyrians, and then they were conquered and ruled by the Babylons, and then they were ruled by Persia, and then the Greeks came in. When the Greeks came in with this whole new idea, right? So Jewish thinking is like God is at the center, right? God is ultimate. But the Greeks had this philosophy called Hellenism, which was like God is not the center of the universe. Man is at the center of the universe. And so everything about your life should center about what's fun for you, what's pleasurable for you. You're at the center. And so the Jews are grappling with this idea. It's like sweeping over their culture, and it's everywhere. And so some of them are thinking like, sure, I can enjoy this whole idea of luxury and pleasure, and also, God is still, sovereign. I can do both of these things. And so all of the Jewish people just kind of got fractioned. There are some people who are just like, they embraced it, and they're like, yeah, I can kind of do both. And then some people are like, absolutely, heck no, not. I'm still going to be poor, and I'm still going to follow God's law because that's the most important thing to me, and I reject it outright. But the whole of them just got fractured, right? So they've been conquered one after the other. They're fractured. And plus, these new religions started coming in, and so there were so many different degrees of change being thrown at the Israelite people, and they were all responding differently. And out of this chaos and this mess, God's intervention was not to come down in power and clean house with an army of angels. No, God's response to the chaos and the messiness of life was to become one of us. He made himself a human. That was his response. But how? What actually happened, right? You guys are starting to think critically. Tell me, how is this possible? So we're going to look at, there are two books that give us a good account. One of them is Matthew. One of them is Luke. So Matthew was born a Jew. He kind of gave up the Jewish way of living and became a tax collector for the Romans. And so he lived most of his life, if not his entire life, feeling like an outcaster and a sellout. So he was shunned. And so he writes his book, Matthew, as a Jew to other Jews in such a way to make them feel like no one is an outcast. That's the whole point of following Jesus, is that no one is an outcast anymore. The other guy is Luke. So Luke was born a Gentile, but he converted to Judaism. Professionally, he was a physician, but he kind of moonlighted as a journalist. And so he set out to write a book that's just, I'm going to interview everyone and write this kind of comprehensive novel. And most of its information came from interviewing Mary, the mother of Jesus. So we're going to take a look at Luke's book real quick. Luke chapter 2, 1 through 7. It'll be up on the screen for you guys and for me. So at the time that the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed, a census is going to be taken. So we're going to count how many people live here. This was the first census taken since when Bob was governor of Syria. All of them returned to their own ancestral towns to register. Because Joseph was a descendant from King David, he has to go to Bethlehem in order to be counted in his hometown, more or less. He traveled from there to Nazareth. From Nazareth to Bethlehem. And so he took with him Mary, obviously, who we know was pregnant, obviously. She was expecting a child, obviously. While they were there, the time came for a baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn son, wrapped him in cloths, put him in a manger because there was no room in the inn. So we know these pieces of the story. We've heard these over and over and over again. But I don't know if you're like me, when I like to imagine this story, my first instinct is to imagine Mary and Joseph rolling into town at the last minute, right? Joseph is going door to door. Hey, do you have any room in this motel? No. Okay, cool. Hey, do you have any room in this motel? Okay, no, cool. You just go on to the next one. He's elbowing himself in the plaza, right? Trying to find space, frantically freaking out because his wife's water already broke and I don't have a place to stay. And so that's how we imagine the situation. And door to door, person by person, they open the door and they see a guy not married to this girl who's pregnant, and they judge them nope, no space for you, boom. And then over and over and over again, yet they judge them, no space for you, boom. Until finally one guy is okay, fine, you can stay with me, but you gotta stay in the barn. That's how we imagine this unfolding, none of those details are in Scripture. Neither Matthew nor Luke indicate any of these details. Neither one of them even mention an innkeeper. So, what do we know for sure? We know for sure that Mary and Joseph were poor. And we know this because whenever you'd go consecrate your child, you would offer a lamb as the sacrifice. And if you were poor, Levitical law allowed you to do birds instead of a lamb. And we know that they did birds. So we can conclude pretty sure that they were poor. We know that Mary was pregnant, for sure, obviously. We know that they were betrothed, which is like engaged. But don't get it twisted, because like once you were betrothed in that culture, like the whole idea of her being pregnant but not being married was not a big deal, so don't get it twisted. We know that Jesus was from no man's land, Nazareth. Nazareth had like 35 houses, maybe 100 people. Nazareth did not exist on a map until 100 years after the birth of Jesus. If you were playing Monopoly, Nazareth is like Baltic Avenue. You know, the very, very butt end, basically. And we know that while they were there, Mary gave birth. And we know that Jesus was born in a manger because the second floor of their Airbnb didn't have any room, and they probably didn't get a refund. So think about this, students. The living God of the universe became one of us. And nothing about the birth was unique. Nothing about the birth was interesting. Nothing about the birth was wild or traumatic or dramatic. Nothing was unique. The whole thing itself was forgettable. His birth was forgettable. His childhood was forgettable. His parents were forgettable. His job was forgettable. His hometown was forgettable. So ask yourself, does this kind of ruin the story for you? Or does it make it just a little more interesting? Because the birth of Jesus was both ordinary and extraordinary. It was both natural and supernatural. The miracle was not the manger or the inn or the innkeeper or the story or the birth itself. The miracle was that God became one of us, and he gave us the most valuable gift imaginable in his son Jesus, and he gave this gift in plain brown wrapping paper. The miracle is that God became one of us. There's another passage in Hebrews that I want to go over with you guys. It'll be up on the screen for you and for me also. Nope, not that one. There we go. Since, therefore, we have a high priest who has ascended into heaven, right? Jesus, the Son of God, let us hold firmly to the faith we profess. For we do not have a high priest who's unable to empathize with our weaknesses, but we have one who has been tempted in every way, just as we are, yet he did not sin. So let us approach God's throne of grace with confidence so that we can receive mercy and find grace to help us in our time of need. Guys, Jesus understands what it's like to be you because he's been you. He knows you better than you know yourself. If you want to know yourself better, get to know him better. He knows where you are right now. Don't one day yourself. One day I'll be smarter. One day I'll know more. One day I'll be in a better position. One day this will be different. Don't one day yourself, because God can bring good from you where you are, anywhere. And he knows what you can do. If God can bring so much good from a no-name kid, from a town that didn't exist on a map, imagine what he can do with this group in a place like Frisco and McKinney, with unlimited resources, basically. Imagine how much more he can do in you, through you, in a place like this. And last thing I'll say is, don't get stuck thinking that yeah, but my life's a mess, and I've got just this pile of stuff, and God's over there on the other side of my stuff. If I could just figure out how to get around my stuff or get through my stuff or take this apart or be better, if I could just be better, then I can get to God over there. but my life keeps getting in the way. Jesus is not on the other side of your life's junk or your life's trash. Jesus is literally standing next to you saying, I've done this before. Stay with me. I know what to do. We will do this together. So as you prepare for small group, I want you to think back to my Christmas story real quick. Is there any part of that story that relates to this Christmas for you? Is this Christmas feeling kind of alone, heavy, isolated, or poor, or grieving? Or is this Christmas for you kind of like the first Christmas? Boring, average, not special, quiet? Or is your Christmas this year kind of somewhere in between? So I'm going to pray us out, and then I want you guys to think about that question and actively participate in your group. So, Father God, thank you so much for the Christmas story. Thank you for the miracle of Jesus' birth, but more importantly, thank you for the miracle of becoming one of us so that you can truly understand our experience and be an effective role model for us as we live our lives today in 2024 and forever. Thank you for the book, the gift of your word, the Lord. And I just pray that you would bless these small group conversations, bless these kids as they continue to use these thinking skills that are developing in their brains. So thank you so much for your son, Jesus, and thank you for being good. Amen.